Skeleton Crew has wrapped up on Disney Plus, and it seems like everybody forgot already that it even existed. The general consensus among the few brave souls that decided to watch this show is that it wasn't that bad, and I may get some flack for saying this, but I really didn't think it was that good or engaging, guys. I think I just have higher standards for Star Wars personally than it didn't suck, therefore it's great. But I mean, I can't exactly blame people for being somewhat relieved considering the state that this company is in. Skeleton Crew really just felt like weekly homework, and that's what Star Wars feels like in general right now. It's just homework. It's not actually something you enjoy consuming. These shows are starting to more and more as time goes by feel like chores to watch, not something that I really look forward to all that much. Except for Andor Season 2, I'm actually excited for that, but that's besides the point. Since I love Star Wars so much, I feel as if it's almost my obligation to talk about this show, which sucks because I wish I would want to talk about this, not feel obligated to, but I think that speaks volumes for where we're at and where we have been at with Disney Star Wars for a long time now. Like I said, Skeleton Crew is fine, it's okay, it didn't piss me off, but it certainly isn't going to move the needle whatsoever in a favorable direction for Lucasfilm and isn't going to win any hearts back. I'm sure that most of you are aware, but for those of you that aren't, Skeleton Crew was the least watched Star Wars show ever on Disney Plus, if you look at the minutes watched. And I was a little surprised by that at first, because Skeleton Crew certainly isn't as bad as something like The Acolyte, but after I thought about it a little bit more, it actually started to make sense. Skeleton Crew came right after The Acolyte, which was a major drop-off point for fans. It was kind of a similar case for Andor. That show was loved by the people that watched it, but it came right after the abomination that was Kenobi, and a significant amount of people checked out after that, resulting in Andor having very poor numbers. Historically, Disney has had a lot of those drop-off type of moments during its tenure, where the fan base just keeps getting smaller and smaller. There's 5 really big ones that come to my mind. The Force Awakens was the first one. It made $2 billion at the box office, but if you skip ahead to The Last Jedi, it only made 1.3. The Last Jedi is, in my mind, the first major instance where a lot of people started noticing that something was really wrong. Skip forward to Rise of Skywalker, that only made $1 billion, a 50% drop-off from The Force Awakens' $2 billion. But after the sequel trilogy concluded, I think a lot of people were willing to give Star Wars under Disney a second chance. This was the beginning stages of Disney Plus, and a lot of people saw it as a good avenue for Star Wars content to get made. And it went okay for a while. Mando seasons 1 and 2 were pretty well liked. Boba Fett sucked, but you could just say that it was a rushed hiccup. Then Kenobi comes out. A story that fans were looking forward to for years. A show that had so much hype leading up to it from Lucasfilm. But a tiny budget for some reason, and they fucked it up so bad. This was the point that I knew Star Wars was beyond saving. If Star Wars was ever going to make a comeback now, Lucasfilm needed to be blown up from the inside out. Kenobi was a massive flop among the fans, and for many people, the last straw. Skip forward 2 years and we get The Acolyte, which promised to be a new kind of Star Wars story outside the Skywalker saga. Something that had never been done on screen. And what we got was probably the worst canon piece of Star Wars material ever conceived. And that's where we find ourselves when we now make it to Skeleton Crew. That's why this show flopped. Not because it was that bad or that it deserved it, because the fan base is gone. I'd say that from all the worldwide hype surrounding The Force Awakens, among all types of fans, casuals and all the way up to hardcores, maybe 10% is even left watching anything new Star Wars related. And I think that 10% is being generous. But now that we understand where we are with the franchise and why Skeleton Crew flopped so severely, I want to take a look at the actual content of the show itself. To start off positively, I actually for the most part felt like we were back in the Star Wars universe. From the volume stage nightmare that was The Acolyte, a lot of the sets here are actually really good. There is a lot of talent and creativity on display here. While I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of all the locations that they came up with, at Aden in particular I didn't like at all. At least it mostly had a Star Wars aesthetic to it, which is really hard to describe exactly what that is, but it's just something that you know when you see it. The alien makeup and puppetry is also very good. This is probably the best work from the art department I've seen in a while. Oftentimes in the past it's looked very animatronic, or the CGI just flat out doesn't look very good, but the motions and designs here I have to say are well executed. Another big positive that can't really be understated is Skeleton Crew harbors a cast of characters that I actually like, or I think don't hate is the best way to put it, which really goes a long way because it's very easy to hate a show from the early onset when you absolutely hate the people on screen. And I don't mean hate as in root against them, I mean hate as in their character literally makes you angry. So good job, writers of Skeleton Crew, you're on the right track. The character work here is also pretty good. It's nothing to write home about, but everybody has very distinct personalities. Their goals and motivations are clear. They're written pretty consistently. Except for SM33. He's kinda all over the place and in some instances really damages the narrative based on his inconsistencies, which really bogs down the show. Which is a shame because I really liked him starting out, but some of his decisions just don't make sense. He constantly changes who he takes orders from and the rules that he follows, which becomes really distracting towards the tail end of the season. Another positive though that I'm thankful to say is the acting was actually a lot better than I was expecting. Fern, I did not like, but that's mostly because I found her character to be really annoying and the actress playing her is by far the weakest. But the rest of the child actors are pretty good, I must say. Wim kind of represents all of us as a child. Neil is the super innocent friend that we probably all had, although there isn't really much to him beyond that. KB was fine as the nerdy tech girl, and Jude Law is having the time of his life. I actually loved Jude Law's performance in this. He's by far the best actor, which isn't really surprising considering he's really the only A-lister on this cast, but it was very entertaining to see him obviously have a lot of fun with this role. And Jod is probably the only character in the show that I can actually say I'd want to see more of. He's got a lot of charisma to him, and his backstory seems pretty interesting and it's only alluded to. And we don't even know how his fate ends because this is the last shot that we see of him. But besides the decent character work and solid acting, that's about where my list of things I like ends. The main problem that I have with Skeleton Crew is I never found myself able to get too invested in the story. At the end of the day, story is king. And if I don't like the story, then I'm probably not going to like the show overall. And yeah, I know, this is just a fun kid's adventure. That's what everybody says. But regardless of that fact, that doesn't mean you can't make the story really engaging or interesting. Right from the get-go, I started having issues. Like, don't you think it would be better if the kids intentionally left the planet on the Onyx Cinder and intentionally went on an adventure instead of just leaving by dumb accident? It would have been more exciting to see these kids really excited to go on an adventure, but then once they realize they're being hunted by pirates, it's a scramble to make it home for their survival. It's a slightly different approach, but I think it would have been better than the kids just saying, "I want to go home, we gotta get home," every other sentence. The narrative is also very drawn out to the point where it just feels like we're going from one event to the next event to the next event and so on. Sure, it's cool I guess seeing all the various locations they go to, but it really feels like they're going from side mission to side mission to side mission just to find this place, which shouldn't be that hard to find in the first place. And I know that's kind of the point of a treasure hunt, which is basically what they're on. They're trying to find the lost treasure planet. But that leads into my biggest criticism, which is the whole plot point of At-Aden being lost to the whole galaxy just doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. It's revealed by the end of the show that At-Aden was used as a mint to print money during the time of the Old Republic. Not the old Republic, the Republic we see in the prequels. But they've been cut off from the galaxy ever since Order 66. For some reason, the Empire just decided not to continue using the mint of the government they just inherited and have just decided to cut it off. And the fact that At-Aden's coordinates are not known by anybody means that the Empire would have had to destroy the records and the coordinates of this planet from their records, which I don't know why you would do that. There's no reason why you would. And even if the Empire did, are you really trying to tell me that there's no other database out there in the galaxy where you can easily access these coordinates? Also, why does this planet have a myth-like status attached to it? For something to truly gain myth-like status, it has to be out of the public eye for a long time. But At-Aden hasn't been utilized as a mint for only like 30 years. At most, people would just consider At-Aden to be an abandoned factory planet or something, not something that has devolved into mythical pirate stories. Also, do the people on At-Aden not find it strange that nobody has contacted them in literal decades? Would they not send their own emissaries out to try and find out why nobody has visited them for so long when seemingly it used to be a regular occurrence? I take such big issue with all this because this is an essential aspect of the show, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and was certainly not thought out very well. It makes this whole aspect of these kids trying to get back to this planet that nobody can find a whole lot weaker because it all seems way too far-fetched. But if you're able to just overlook all that, then you'll probably quite like Skeleton Crew because that's pretty much the whole show summed up in a nutshell. A bunch of kids trying to find their way back to their mythical planet. Another small thing I took a little bit of issue with is I don't think the show knew exactly what it wanted to be, or at least who it was marketing itself towards. A lot of the marketing leading up to the show advertised it as a kid's show, but I didn't really get that impression very much. Or at least as strongly as they were suggesting. Sure, it's got 4 children as our lead protagonist, and it is more lighthearted in its tone, but I don't think that necessarily makes something for kids. And that's really the only 2 noticeable differences between Skeleton Crew and the other Star Wars shows when it comes to the show's tone. So that was a little confusing for me, because there are times where I can see the childish angle that they're going for, and other times where I don't see this as a kid's show at all. And I don't even know why they would choose to market it like that so heavily if it wasn't even that childlike. Because labeling something for children is obviously going to turn some people away, which most certainly contributed to the fact that this show performed terribly. And even if you want to argue, yes, it's a kid's show, it was clearly meant to be a kid's show, fair enough, but the kid's show should not be getting an $136 million budget when Kenobi of all projects gets a $90 million budget. The disbursement of resources in this company is unbelievable, but I digress. All in all, while Skeleton Crew has a plethora of issues and narrative inconsistencies, I don't hate it. This is very easily something that can be enjoyed, it's just there's not much deeper beyond that. Something that's made Star Wars last so long in the cultural eye is the rich thematic elements and timeless stories behind it, but Skeleton Crew lacks that. Skeleton Crew is a frozen dinner that you eat, somewhat enjoying the moment, and then forget you ever even had it by the next morning. And that's really all it is. Well, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. If you made it this far and you enjoyed the video, then please, help me out by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. It would be much appreciated. And if you guys have any thoughts of your own about Skeleton Crew, or Star Wars in general and the current state of things, then let me know in the comments, because I'd be interested to hear it. But anyways, that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys in the next one.